15 doctors at the hospital couldn't save the billionaire. Then the 14-year-old black son of the cleaning lady, who happened to be a medical genius, realized what no one else could see. "Another dose of morphine now!" shouted Dr. Peterson as the monitors in the private room screamed with deafening alarms. Tech billionaire William Cross was dying, and the country's best specialists were completely at a loss. Outside the luxurious room, Kevin cleaned the hallway with mechanical movements, but his eyes never left the monitor screens visible through the half-open door. At just 14, he already knew that hospital better than his own home. For 3 years, he had accompanied his mother, Diane, on her night shifts ever since she got the job as a cleaning lady to support the family on her own. "Kevin, stop staring at the doctors and help me here," Diane whispered, pulling her son by the arm. "You know we can't draw attention to ourselves," but Kevin couldn't look away. During the 2 weeks Cross had been hospitalized, he had observed every symptom, every test, every medication, and something was completely wrong. The signs didn't match the diagnosis the doctors insisted on defending. Dr. Peterson stormed out of the room, his face flushed with frustration, followed by 4 other renowned specialists. "Impossible," he muttered to Dr. Williams. 15 of the best doctors in the country and we can't even stabilize him. The symptoms don't make sense." "Maybe it's some rare syndrome," suggested Dr. Williams, adjusting his immaculate lab coat. "Something only European doctors have seen." Kevin clenched his fists. They were looking for zebras when horses stood right in front of them. Over the years, he had devoured every abandoned medical book in the hospital library, memorized procedure manuals tossed into the trash, and watched hundreds of surgeries through operating room windows. His mother always said he was different. While other kids memorized video games, Kevin memorized medical encyclopedias. But different also meant invisible. The son of a black cleaning lady had no voice in medical discussions. "Mom," Kevin whispered, "I know what Cross has. The doctors are treating him completely wrong." Diane stopped cleaning and looked at her son with a mixture of pride and fear. "Kevin, sweetheart, you're brilliant, but this is no place for compromised fifth cranial nerves. Progressive loss of motor coordination, but normal neurological exams." Kevin interrupted, his voice sharp. "They're chasing a neurological disease when they should be investigating poisoning." Diane's eyes widened. She knew the difference between her son's guesses and his certainties, and the confidence in his voice now frightened her. At the end of the hall, the doctors gathered for an emergency conference. Meanwhile, Kevin watched a nurse administer another dose of the drug he suspected was slowly killing Cross. His heart pounded. Through the ventilation ducts he cleaned weakly, Kevin slipped close enough to hear every word of the emergency meeting. "We're wasting time," declared Dr. Peterson, slamming his fist on the table. "We've tried antivirals, antibiotics, even experimental therapies. Nothing works." Dr. Williams flipped desperately through Cross's charts. "The tests remain inconclusive. Maybe we should transfer him to Johns Hopkins." "Impossible," Peterson exploded. "We have the best specialists in the country right here. If we can't solve it, no one can." Kevin shook his head. Pure arrogance. They were killing Cross out of pride, refusing to admit they had been looking in the wrong direction from the start. When he slipped back to the room, Cross was visibly worse, shaking hands, dilated pupils, irregular breathing. Kevin's mind raced back 3 years to when he was just 11. A patient with identical symptoms had been admitted. The doctors never found the cause until the autopsy revealed mercury poisoning. Kevin had never forgotten the details, how the tremors began subtly, how confusion developed gradually, and how every neurological test came back normal. Now, he watched in horror as the nurse administered yet another dose of iron chelator, the same useless treatment given to that patient years ago. "Mom," Kevin whispered, pulling Diane into a corner. "They're giving Cross iron chelator. But if it's mercury poisoning, he needs penicillamine or dimercaprol." Diane stared at her son with the same mix of pride and dread she always felt when Kevin's frightening brilliance surfaced. "Kevin, are you absolutely sure?" "100%, Kevin replied, his eyes blazing. The symptoms are identical to Timothy Walsh, room 312, back in 2020. Progressive tremors. Mental confusion. Normal brain MRI, it's organic mercury. Probably methylmercury. His mother stopped cleaning altogether. Kevin hadn't just memorized the symptoms. He remembered the patient's name, exact room number, and the year. At 14, her son carried a mental archive more accurate than the hospital's computers. How do you know all this? Diane asked, even though she already knew the answer. Kevin smiled sadly. Because I read everything, Mom. Every lost medical record, every discarded medical book, every scientific journal forgotten in the waiting room. I've learned that if you're invisible, you can absorb knowledge without anyone noticing. At that moment, Dr. Peterson left the conference room looking utterly frustrated. Kevin approached him respectfully, summoning all the courage he had. Dr. Peterson, he began firmly, I know this is going to sound crazy, but you need to check Mr. Cross for mercury poisoning. The doctor froze, as if a child had just slapped him in the face. Excuse me? The symptoms are classic, Kevin continued quickly before he lost his nerve. Progressive tremors, mental confusion, but a normal MRI, it's identical to the case of Mr. Walsh in 2020. Young man, Dr. Peterson interrupted with a condescending smile that didn't reach his eyes. I know you want to help, but medicine is not a child's game. Timothy Walsh died of complicated pneumonia. No, sir, Kevin insisted, feeling the blood rush to his head. He died of mercury poisoning. I read the autopsy report. It was in the trash in the doctor's lounge. Dr. Peterson's smile vanished instantly. You rummage through medical trash? That's a violation of hospital protocol. I don't rummage, Kevin replied calmly. I clean. And while I clean, I observe. And while I observe, I learn. Dr. Peterson looked around, realizing that other doctors and nurses had stopped to watch the exchange. A 14-year-old black boy, the son of the cleaning lady, was publicly questioning his diagnosis. Security, Dr. Peterson barked. Get that boy and his mother off my floor now. Diane rushed forward, her face flushed with fear and shame. Kevin, what have you done? He's trying to play doctor. Dr. Peterson declared loudly enough for everyone to hear, questioning professional diagnoses based on hospital trash. Cruel laughter echoed through the hallway. Kevin felt every look of contempt like a blade, but he stood his ground. He had learned early on that showing weakness only fed predators. Dr. Peterson, Kevin said with surprising calm. If you don't test for mercury within the next 12 hours, William Cross will die, and you'll have to explain to his family why you ignored the possibility. The doctor turned purple with rage. Is that a threat? It's a medical observation, Kevin replied, staring directly into the eyes of the man 3 times his age with 15 times as many degrees. An observation based on evidence you've chosen to ignore. Security arrived, ready to escort Kevin and Diane out. But before they could be removed, a shrill alarm echoed through the hallway. Cross had gone into convulsions. As doctors rushed desperately to stabilize the dying billionaire, Kevin whispered to his mother, 12 hours? Mom, if they don't test for mercury in 12 hours, we'll have to take drastic measures. Diane looked into her son's eyes and saw a determination that both terrified and inspired her. Kevin wasn't just a brilliant boy. He was a young man who had learned to turn his invisibility into power. And now, for the first time, he was ready to use that knowledge in a way no one could. Ignore. What those arrogant doctors didn't know was that underestimating an invisible genius might become the biggest mistake of their careers, and possibly the last mistake William Cross would allow them to make with his life. Hours after Cross's seizure, the hospital pulsed with tension. Kevin watched through the small circular window in the ICU door as 15 doctors took turns around the billionaire's bed, their faces marked with barely concealed despair. We're losing him, Dr. Williams muttered in the hallway. The symptoms are worsening exponentially. If we don't find the cause in the next few hours, I don't want to hear defeatism, Dr. Peterson snapped, cutting him off. We are the best doctors in the country. Some spoiled kid from the slums isn't going to teach us medicine. Kevin felt every word like a slap, but he stayed focused. He knew that anger without strategy was wasted energy. During his years in the hospital, Kevin had developed something no degree could buy: the ability to become completely invisible when it mattered most. While the doctors argued, he slipped through the corridors like a shadow. His first stop was the medical library, where he had memorized nearly every toxicology book over the past 3 years. But now he needed something more precise. "Kevin?" A soft voice interrupted him as he flipped through a toxicology emergency manual. It was Dr. Jennifer Chun, a third-year resident who had always been kind to him and his mother. "What are you doing here? I heard there was an incident with Dr. Peterson." Kevin looked around, making sure they were alone. "Dr. Chun, can I trust you?" She blinked in surprise at the boy's seriousness. "Of course, Kevin. What's going on?" "Cross is dying of mercury poisoning," Kevin said bluntly. "The symptoms are identical to the Walsh case in 2020. Progressive tremors, mental confusion, normal MRI. They're giving him iron chelator, but he needs penicillamine or dimercaprol." Dr. Chun stared at him for a long moment, studying the determined fire in his young eyes. At 26, she was still young enough to remember being dismissed and underestimated by older doctors. "Kevin, are you absolutely sure about this?" "100%, Kevin replied, opening the book to the exact page on mercury poisoning. "Look, these symptoms match perfectly, and I have a theory about how the mercury is getting into his system." The doctor leaned in to examine the text, impressed by the accuracy of Kevin's knowledge. "How do you know all this?" he asked. "I learned by reading, observing, and absorbing everything I could," Kevin explained. "When you're invisible, people talk in front of you as if you don't exist. I've learned more medicine in these 3 years than many residents learn in years of college." Dr. Chun nodded slowly. "What do you need me to do?" "I need access to Cross's complete medical records for the last 3 months, including visitor logs and a list of personal items he uses regularly," Kevin said, his eyes shining with the intensity that always unnerved adults. "And I need someone who can help me collect evidence without Dr. Peterson knowing." As they spoke, Kevin outlined his theory. Someone was systematically poisoning Cross through personal products. During his observations, he'd noticed that Cross used a particular imported toothpaste, an aftershave lotion, and a certain headache medicine every day. Any one of those items could have been laced with organic mercury, Kevin explained. The absorption would be gradual, causing slow but lethal poisoning. "Kevin, that's brilliant," Dr. Chun said quietly. "But if you're right, this is attempted murder." "Exactly," Kevin replied. "That's why I need solid evidence before confronting Dr. Peterson again. The first time he humiliated me publicly, next time I'll have proof he can't ignore." A nurse suddenly rushed down the hall. "Emergency in Cross's room. He's having another episode." Kevin and Dr. Chun ran to the room and found a scene of controlled panic. Cross was having intermittent seizures. His skin had taken on a grayish hue and the monitors showed dangerously unstable vitals. "Give 50 more milligrams of diazepam," Dr. Peterson shouted and ordered an increase in the iron chelator. Dr. Chun approached cautiously. "Perhaps we should consider other possibilities. The symptoms aren't responding to the current treatment." Dr. Peterson cut her off with an icy stare. "I hope you haven't been influenced by that boy's fantasies. Medicine isn't democratic. Experience counts more than childish theories." Kevin watched from outside the room, fists clenched in frustration. Every minute lost was a minute less of life for Cross. As the doctors continued ineffective treatments, Kevin made a decision that would change everything. During the nursing shift change, Kevin gained access to Cross's room. With precise, silent movements, he photographed all of the billionaire's personal items with his phone: aftershave, toothpaste, medications, even the imported soap. When he examined the toothpaste tube more closely, his heart raced. The paste had a slightly different tint, an almost imperceptible silvery sheen. Using a small plastic spatula from the bathroom, Kevin collected a tiny sample and stored it in a small container he'd borrowed from the lab. "What are you doing?" an authoritative voice demanded behind him. Kevin slowly turned and found Dr. Peterson in the doorway, flanked by 2 hospital security guards. "Collecting evidence," Kevin replied calmly. "Evidence?" Dr. Peterson laughed dismissively. "Kid, you're delusional. Security, remove this minor from the room immediately and bring his mother. I'll take this up with administration." Before the guards moved, Dr. Chun stepped into the doorway. Dr. Peterson, maybe we should hear what Kevin has to say. Cross is rapidly deteriorating on the current regimen. Dr. Peterson's eyes blazed. Her career at this hospital may be at stake if she continues to support this circus. Kevin stepped forward, holding the small container with the sample. Dr. Peterson, he said, steady and unafraid. In 12 hours, Cross will be dead if you continue this treatment. But if you test this sample for mercury, you'll find lethal concentrations. That's ridiculous, Dr. Peterson scoffed. Yet Kevin noticed a barely perceptible hesitation in his voice. Then do the test, Kevin challenged, holding out the container. If I'm wrong, I'll never question a medical diagnosis again. But if you're right, what? Dr. Peterson asked sarcastically. Kevin looked straight into the doctor's eyes, his voice carrying a calm confidence that silenced the room. If I'm right, you'll have to explain how a 14-year-old boy saved a billionaire's life when 15 experts failed. The silence was broken only by the rhythmic beeps of Cross's monitors. Dr. Peterson glanced from the sample to Kevin, then to Dr. Chun, who watched with growing interest. All right, Dr. Peterson said at last, his voice betraying equal parts irritation and curiosity. We'll do his little test. But when it comes back negative, I want him and his mother out of this hospital permanently. Kevin allowed himself a small, satisfied smile, the kind that held years of accumulated knowledge and the certainty of what that test would reveal. I accept the bet, Dr. Peterson, he said. But you should prepare an explanation for the press about how the hospital almost lost the country's most famous billionaire because of medical pride. As Dr. Peterson left to arrange the test, uncomfortable but committed, Kevin whispered to Dr. Chun. Now comes the interesting part. When the test is positive for mercury, we'll find out who's trying to kill Cross. And I already have my suspicions. Dr. Chun looked at him with growing admiration. Kevin, how did you develop all this expertise? When society makes you invisible, you learn to see things others don't, Kevin replied, watching through the window as Dr. Peterson argued animatedly with other doctors in the hall. What I've seen over the past 3 years has prepared me for this moment. The test would take 2 hours to complete. 2 hours Kevin knew he would use to prepare the next phase of his plan. Proving that Cross was being poisoned was only the beginning. Finding out who was behind it, and why, would be the true test of his medical genius. As he watched Cross struggle with the effects of mercury, Kevin felt an iron determination crystallize in his chest. 15 renowned doctors had failed not because of lack of knowledge, but because of lack of humility to listen to different perspectives. Now, in the next 2 hours, he would prove that wisdom sometimes comes from the most unexpected places, and that underestimating someone because of age, skin color, or social class could be a fatal mistake. 2 hours and 17 minutes later, Dr. Peterson returned to Cross's room with an expression Kevin would never forget. The test came back positive for mercury. Lethal levels. Just as the boy predicted, she announced to the assembled medical team, her voice sharp as if she were chewing glass. Organic mercury poisoning. Concentration, 2.4 parts per million in the toothpaste. The silence that followed was broken only by the beeping of Cross's monitors. 15 renowned specialists stared at Kevin as if they were seeing a ghost, or a miracle. Begin treatment with dimercaprol immediately, Kevin said calmly, addressing Dr. Peterson directly. 50 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, intramuscularly every 4 hours. Dr. Peterson opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. The boy had just saved a billionaire's life when 15 doctors had failed. To protest would be to publicly admit her incompetence, but Kevin wasn't finished. Dr. Peterson, have you checked who has access to Mr. Cross's personal belongings? That's a job for the police, she replied defensively. Actually, Kevin continued, pulling out his phone, I've already identified the culprit. All eyes turned to the 14-year-old boy who was about to solve not only a poisoning, but an attempted murder. For 3 weeks, I observed Cross's visitors, Kevin explained methodically. Only 3 people had regular access to his personal items. Head nurse Sandra Williams, his personal assistant David Foster, and his ex-wife Rebecca Cross. He swiped to a photo. But only one person visited exactly 3 hours before each health crisis, Rebecca Cross, and she always brought special gifts, including the imported organic toothpaste. Dr. Peterson frowned. How do you have this information? Because while you were discussing impossible theories, I was documenting patterns, Kevin replied. Rebecca visited on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the past 3 weeks. Every Thursday, she brought special hygiene products for her ex-husband, claiming they were organic and better for his sensitive health. Dr. Chun stepped forward, impressed. Kevin, how did you connect all this? A billionaire divorce means a fight over inheritance, Kevin explained simply. Cross is worth $4.2 billion. If he died of natural causes before changing his will, Rebecca would inherit 80% of the fortune. At that moment, as if the universe were orchestrating perfect justice, Rebecca Cross entered the room carrying an elegant pharmacy bag. William, dear, I brought your favorite products, she said sweetly, unaware of the tension in the room. The special toothpaste you love. Mrs. Cross, Kevin interjected politely, could you explain where you purchased these special products? Rebecca's smile faltered. She turned to the doctors. Excuse me, who is he? I'm Kevin, he replied firmly. And I just saved your ex-husband's life by discovering that someone was systematically poisoning him with organic mercury mixed into his hygiene products. Rebecca's face instantly paled. Her hands trembled almost imperceptibly as she held the bag. That's absurd, she stammered. I would never, ma'am, Kevin pressed relentlessly. You've been working as an industrial chemist for 15 years. You have access to organic mercury through the pharmaceutical company where you consult. And coincidentally, Cross always suffers seizures exactly 6 hours after your visits. Dr. Peterson watched the scene with a mixture of horror and growing admiration. The boy wasn't just solving a medical case, he was conducting a real-time criminal investigation. This is ridiculous, Rebecca snapped, trying to maintain composure. I love William. I would never hurt him. Kevin swiped again on his phone. Here you are yesterday, buying hygiene products at the downtown pharmacy. And here, he showed another photo. Entering the Meridian Chemical Laboratory on Monday, where you consult and have access to organic mercury. How did you... Rebecca began, then stopped, realizing she was incriminating herself. Because I observe, ma'am, Kevin said evenly. When you're invisible, you learn to see patterns others overlook. And the pattern here is crystal clear. An ambitious ex-wife with chemical knowledge and financial motive, systematically poisoning her ex-husband to inherit billions. Dr. Peterson finally found her voice. Security! Call the police immediately! Rebecca dropped the bag, products scattering across the floor. Her mask of the loving, concerned ex-wife crumbled, revealing the desperation of someone who knew she had been caught. You can't prove anything! She shouted. It's his word against mine! Kevin smiled. The same calm smile he had worn when Dr. Peterson publicly humiliated him. Actually, ma'am, I do have proof. He held up his phone. I recorded everything. Your visits, your schedules, your purchases, and... He paused dramatically. The recording of you mixing something into his toothpaste yesterday when you thought no one was looking. The silence in the room was deafening. Rebecca Cross, who had coldly attempted to murder her ex-husband for money, was being exposed by a 14-year-old black boy whom society had trained to be invisible, impossible. She whispered. No one was in the hallway. I was cleaning the room next door, Kevin explained. With the door ajar, he had the perfect angle to see and record everything. Rebecca's legs gave way. She leaned against the wall, realizing that her perfect plan had been destroyed by someone she hadn't even noticed existed. Dr. Peterson looked at Kevin with an expression that mixed admiration, shame, and utter amazement. In less than 24 hours, this boy had diagnosed a poisoning that 15 experts had missed, identified the culprit, and collected enough evidence for a conviction. Kevin, Dr. Peterson said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. You didn't just save Cross's life. You solved a case that could have been the perfect crime. As the police led Rebecca Cross away in handcuffs, and William Cross began to show signs of improvement with the correct treatment, Kevin remained in the corner of the room, watching. At 14, he had proven that genius has no color, age, or social class. In the center of that hospital room, where arrogance disguised as medical expertise had once reigned, a new reality was taking shape. Like a symphony finally finding harmony after years of dissonance. It proved that true wisdom can flourish in the most unexpected places, especially when society tries hardest to keep it invisible. 6 months later, Kevin walked through the same hospital corridors. But now wearing a white coat with his name embroidered on it, Kevin Beaumont, junior medical consultant. At 15, he had become the youngest consultant in the hospital's history, working part-time while completing his accelerated medical studies on a full scholarship. Dr. Peterson, who had once humiliated him publicly, now greeted him respectfully in the hallways. Arrogance had been replaced by forced humility. After all, explaining how a 14-year-old boy saved a billionaire when 15 specialists had failed was not exactly the kind of story that elevated a medical reputation. One morning, Dr. Peterson intercepted him, clearly uncomfortable. "I wanted to thank you again for showing us what we had missed." Kevin smiled politely. "Dr. Peterson, we all make mistakes. The difference is in learning from them." The Cross case had made national headlines. Boy genius saves billionaire and unravels conspiracy graced newspaper front pages for weeks. Universities offered him full scholarships. Television programs competed for interviews. Kevin became a symbol that genius has no color, age or social class. William Cross, fully recovered, established a $100 million educational fund specifically for invisible young people like Kevin, brilliant children whose potential was ignored by systems that saw only uniforms, not minds. "That boy saved me when the best doctors in the country failed," Cross said in an interview. "If there's another Kevin out there being underestimated, I want to find him." Diane now worked as the program coordinator, no longer a cleaning lady. "My son taught me that knowledge is never lost. It just waits for the right moment to shine," she said proudly in her first television interview. Rebecca Cross was sentenced to 25 years in prison for attempted murder. During the trial, when asked how she felt about being discovered by a teenager, she replied bitterly, "I didn't even see he existed." The phrase went viral, symbolizing how society loses incredible talent through prejudice and social invisibility. Kevin remained humble throughout his transformation. In interviews, he always emphasized that he had learned by observing, not because he was special. Anyone can develop these skills if they have access to knowledge and the opportunity to apply it, he would say. Today, Kevin is studying medicine at Harvard, at just 15. But he regularly returns to the hospital where it all began, not as the invisible son of the cleaning lady, but as a respected consultant who continues to save lives through keen observation and applied knowledge. Dr. Peterson, for his part, never fully recovered from the public embarrassment. Although he retained his position, he had lost the moral authority he once commanded. His colleagues constantly reminded him of the day a 14-year-old black boy taught him medicine. Kevin's story proves that true genius does not need recognition to exist. It only waits for the right opportunity to transform the world. Sometimes, those whom society trains to be invisible are exactly the ones who see what everyone else has missed. The best revenge against prejudice is not anger, but success his oppressors never imagined possible. Kevin turned invisibility into a superpower, others' ignorance into his opportunity, and proved that underestimating someone based on appearances can be the greatest mistake of all. If this story of overcoming adversity inspired you, subscribe to the channel for more narratives that show how true justice happens when talent finds its chance to shine.